Today we're starting the last part of Unit 3. We will finish it up and test over it before we go on to spring break. Okay? 2 more weeks. So we have today, tomorrow, and then 10 more days, and then we will have spring break. We will finish this packet before we leave for spring break though. Okay, number 1. I don't know if anyone has ever taught you this, but if you have x and it's squared, the inverse operation of squared is square root. They cancel each other out, leaving x by itself. Okay, let me say that again. We all know what inverse operations are. Like the inverse of addition is subtraction, the inverse of multiplication is division. Well, the inverse of squaring something is to square root it. A square root and a power of 2 cancel each other out. So down here, problem number 1. If we're trying to get m by itself, the only way m can be by itself is for the 2 to go away. And since that's squared, you square root it. It'll cancel it out, leaving m by itself like we wanted. But just like with all equations, if you square one side, you must square the other side. And what is the square root of 16? 4. However, all of these questions have 2 solutions. And let me tell you why. Anytime you're dealing with a quadratic equation, which means your highest exponent is a 2, you have 2 answers. Well, let me show you what those 2 answers are. Obviously, one of them's a positive 4. The other one's a negative 4. Because think about it. Okay, look. If I have m squared equals 16, and I plug in a 4 the first time, what's 4 squared? What's negative 4 squared? Still a positive 16, right? So do you see why a positive 4 would work in this equation and a negative 4 would work? So both of them are solutions. M equals plus or minus 4. Okay, now let's go down to number 6. For number 6, it's a little bit different. What would you need to do first? Get the x alone, and what's the first step to getting the x alone? No. First, you want to divide by that 10. And so x squared now equals divided by 10, which is 100. Now to get the x alone, you need to get rid of that exponent of 2. And what's the inverse operation of squaring something? Square rooting it. Those cancel. So x equals the square root of 100, which is 10. But remember, this is a quadratic equation because it's x squared, which means there's 2 answers. What's the second answer? A negative 10. So you put a plus or minus on there showing that a positive 10 would work and a negative 10 would work. Think about it. Positive 10 squared is 100. 100 times 10 is 1,000. Negative 10 squared is still 100. It's still 100, and 100 times 10 is still 1,000. So does everybody understand why you have to put that plus or minus? Okay, now let's look at number 9. For number 9, what would we do first? Well, it's already plus 2, so the inverse operation of plus 2 would be minus 2 on both sides. So now I have a squared equals 9, and now to isolate the a, what do I do on both sides? Square root it. Those cancel each other out, leaving a by itself like we wanted, and the square root of 9 is 3, but plus or minus, because 3 squared is 9, but so is negative 3 squared. Because a negative times a negative is a positive. Okay, now flip to the next page. Number 11. What would we do first on number 11? Add 7. First you add 7. And so now we have 16n squared equals 25. Now to solve for n, what would we do to both sides? And so n squared equals, what's 25 divided by 16? Okay, so if we're rounding that to the 10th place, what would it be? 1.6. Now how do we isolate the n? Square root it to cancel out the power of 2. And so your answer is the square root of 1.6, which is 1 1.26. If you round that to the tenths place, it would be, and then just like always, plus or minus. You could do a positive 1.3, square it, multiply by 16, minus 7, and you get 18. Or you could do a negative 1.3, square it, multiply by 16, minus 7, you'll get 18. Now, say that you're taking a test, it's multiple choice, and you see 1.3 nowhere. Maybe they chose to leave it in fraction form. Maybe instead of reducing 25 over 16, or instead of, making it a decimal, they chose to leave it as a fraction. Well, what's the square root of 25? What's the square root of 16? What's 5 divided by 4? 1 and 1/4, and doesn't that round up to 1.3? 1.25 rounds to 1.3. So they might look like that. If they don't have it in decimal form, they might have it in fraction form. Yes, Ezekiel? Okay, number 14. What do I do first on this one? So now I have 16x squared equals, okay, now what do I do? So x squared equals, what is 36 divided by 16? 2.25, we'll just round it to 2.3. And now what do I do? Square root it, so x equals plus or minus. You do, on the calculator, you hit second first, and then this x squared button, see how right above it in blue is the square root sign? The square root of 2.3 is 1.5. Yeah, you're right, 1.5. Okay, now think about what that would have been in fraction form. If you'd have kept this a fraction, what's the square root of 36? What's the square root of 16? Which reduces to, and isn't 3 over 2 the same thing as 1.5? So you may see the answer in fraction form instead of decimal. Okay, I'm going to give you a few minutes, like 10 minutes, to complete all problems on pages 1 and 2 before we move on. Okay, number 15. What would you need to do first? Add 8. So we cancel over here, and when you added it on that side, you end up with, okay, so now what do you do? And so n squared equals 1, and then the last step is square root it, cancel out the squared, and so n equals the square root of 1, which is 1, but a positive 1 would work, and a negative 1 would work, because when you square a number, you're going to get the same thing. Okay, any other questions off of pages 1 and 2? 12? Okay, what would I need to do first? Subtract the 1. So 16x squared now equals 4. Now what do I need to do? Right? Okay? Right. Well, correct. The answer would be plus or minus 0.5, but if you were doing it as a fraction, the square root of 4 is 2, the square root of 16 is 4, which reduces to 1/2, so you may also see the answer look like that. 19? Alright, number 19. What would I need to do first? Add the 1. And so 4b squared is left on the left side of the equation, and what's on the right? Negative 36. So now what do I do? So b squared equals, and then what do you need to do? What happens when you type in the square root of negative 9 in your calculator? You get an error, because think about it. The square root of 9 equals 3 because 3 times 3 is 9. If you try to do the square root of negative 9, is negative 3 times negative 3 going to give you a negative 9? And is positive 3 times positive 3 going to give you a negative 9? So that's why you can't take the square root of a negative number, so therefore this one has no solution. Okay, any other questions? Go ahead and turn to page 3. 3. We just finished up doing a lot of problems that look like that, correct? That look like that. If you're asked to factor, you've got to pay attention. Pay attention. If you're asked to factor a squared plus 11a plus 24, how do you factor something like that? Correct. The bubble method. You're going to factor in the two binomials. To get a squared, you have to have the a times a, and then you're looking for two numbers. So you have to multiply to 24 and add to 11. What numbers do that? Nope. They'll make a 24, but not an 11. 8 and 3 will work. Positive 8 times positive 3 is 24, and 8 plus 3 is 11. However, on today's work, they didn't just say factor. They said solve, which is why it said equal to 0. So the next step is actually easier than that step. You're going to take each of those factors, and you're going to set both of them to 0. Okay, see how I just took the a plus 8, set it equal to 0. The a plus 3, set it equal to 0. Now I just need to solve them. Well, these are easy equations to solve. How do you solve this equation? Subtract 8 on both sides. So your first solution is negative 8. And isn't that just the opposite of what was in the factor? To solve this one for a, what do you do on both sides? Subtract 3, and so your second solution is negative 3. Now, the reason that those are the solutions is because those are the two numbers that when plugged in the equation would make it equal 0. Watch what I mean by that. If I type this trinomial in, a squared plus 11a plus 24, but each time I see an a, I plug in my negative 8. See how I'm typing in that exact same trinomial, but each time there was an a, I put in my first solution negative 8. When I hit equals, I get 0, which is what it says it equals. That confirms for me that negative 8 is one of the solutions. Now I can do it again with my second solution. Negative 3, parentheses squared, plus 11 times negative 3 plus 24. I get 0. Those are the only two numbers that when typed in would produce 0. If I had typed in any other number, even just a positive 3, say that I messed up and wrote a positive 3 right here, and then I type it in all of the a places, watch what happens. You do not get 0. Okay, the only two numbers that when typed in this trinomial produce 0 are negative 8 and negative 3. So those are your two solutions. Okay, so let's try another one. Number 2, we want to factor it first. So obviously since it's m squared, we need m times m. And what two numbers multiply to 35 and add to 12? 7 and 5. Okay, so we've done the factoring part. Now we need to do the solving part, which means take each of those factors and set them equal to 0. So to solve this one for m, what would you do to both sides? And so m equals negative 7. So that means if I plugged in negative 7 here, squared it, added it to 12 times negative 7 plus 35, it would give me 0. For this one, what do we do? Minus 5 on both sides. So m equals negative 5. So the reason you have two solutions is because it's quadratic. It's degree 2. 2 is the highest exponent. They're just two different solutions, where before on the previous pages, you were getting like 4 and negative 4, or 2 and negative 2. Now you're getting totally different numbers. Okay, so I want you for the next few minutes to be working on this page, and then I'll take questions over it. All right, let's do one more actually. Let's look at number 6. Yes? It's a binomial instead of a trinomial, right? Does anybody remember how to factor a binomial from the last test? Correct. You write out their prime factors. And why are we doing that? What are we looking for? Right, to see what their GCF is. So for this one, what's their GCF? Just an x. That's all they have in common. So that's what gets factored out of the binomial. What remains inside the binomial? Okay? So that means this time we still have two factors. It's just the first factor is x, so you set it equal to 0. And the second factor is x minus 3, so you set it equal to 0. Okay, you still have two factors. X is a factor and x minus 3 is a factor. You set each of those factors to 0. Well, when we set this one to 0, isn't it basically already done? One of your solutions is 0. And when you set this one to 0, what do you have to do on both sides? So your second solution is they're positive 3. Now let's check them and see. If I plugged in a 0, what's 0 squared? What's 3 times 0? And isn't 0 minus 0 going to equal 0? Okay, if I plugged in a 3 on both of those x's, what's 3 squared? And what's 3 times 3? And if you put that minus in the middle, isn't 9 minus 9 0? So those two work. They actually make the equation equal 0. Okay, so now keep working on this page, and in a few minutes I'll take questions. Okay, number 8. I think the reason number 8 gets people, because it's been asked about in every class, is that you're kind of unsure of what number you're adding to get. Is that right? You're multiplying to get negative 56, and you're adding to get a negative 1. That's an understood 1 right there. So what are some numbers that multiply to 56? 7 and 8. Right. If you make the negative 8 and a positive 7, they'll add to a negative 1. So that means when you set each of these to 0 and solve, what are your final solutions? Okay, let me show you something that will help you tremendously. If you're ever at the factoring step and you're having trouble thinking of the numbers, you can graph it. Y equals, if I type in x squared minus x minus 56. Okay, see how all I typed in was x squared minus 1x basically, but you don't have to type in 1. Minus 56, and I hit graph. I see a parabola that crosses the x-axis in two places. It crosses at negative 7, and it crosses at positive 8. Well, aren't those our final solutions, negative 7 and positive 8? So if you ever graph it, it'll take you all the way to the final solutions. Where it crosses are your final solutions. Even if you're dealing with something that's not x's, when you graph it, you can just type this in as x squared minus 7x minus 8. It doesn't have to be x's to graph it. You just change the variable to x's when you're graphing it. Okay, what other questions did y'all say you had? 10? What? She said 10. Okay, so for this one, you're looking for two numbers that do what? Correct. Right, and remember, if you're having trouble thinking of those numbers, look, just graph it. Even though it's n, just type in it as x squared. And then minus x minus 20. And when you graph it, look, it crosses at negative 4 and it crosses at positive 5. Isn't that what the final solutions are going to be when you set them equal to 0, negative 4 and positive 5? Okay, your homework is page 4. Go ahead and write it on your pink sheet. Today's date is 3/16. You need to attempt all problems to get a stamp.